The air is cold and biting. Jung-ho walks along the snow-covered path. It's quiet, except for the dull crunch of his footsteps. The streetlights glow dimly, and snowflakes swirl in their yellow spots. He's wrapped in a long, dark coat, his hands in his pockets. His gaze glides over the bench. Something glints in the lantern light near the leg, a small black rectangle, almost completely frozen into the snow. He bends down and picks it up with his finger. It's a phone. He brushes off the snow. The device is cold and wet. The screen glass is shattered, cracks spreading from the corner. He's about to put it back, let it rest, but his finger accidentally hits the side button. The screen flashes white, blinding in the darkness. It's displaying a notification. Jung-ho brings the phone closer to his eyes, squinting against the light. He reads, "Mom, we're out of food again. Borrow some money from someone. I'm really hungry." He freezes. His breath turns into a thick cloud of steam and hangs in the air. He rereads the lines. His fingers tighten around the wet casing. These words don't scream. They're quiet, like this park. That only makes them louder inside his head. He looks at the broken screen, at these childishly misspelled words. He doesn't see text. He sees an empty kitchen table. He sees a woman reading this and not knowing what to say. He sees a boy writing and waiting. All of this is happening right now, while he stands here with something that doesn't belong to him in his hand. His thoughts race through his head quickly and clearly. There's no time to think. He's already turning and heading back toward the exit. His steps are louder and faster now, snow flying from under his heels. He takes his phone out of his inside pocket. The screen brightly illuminates his serious face. He clicks on the first contact in the list. The call lasts 2 rings. "Min," says Jung-ho. His voice is low and even, but there's a hint of steel in it. "I found a phone in the Central Park by the main alley. I need all the information about the owner. Address, name, anything you can find. You have 30 minutes. "Accepted. I'll get started," Min immediately replies. No questions. Jung-ho puts his phone in his pocket. He doesn't let go of the device he found. He feels its coldness through the thin leather of his gloves. He steps outside the park fence. The street is brighter. Neon signs are blinking. His black car is parked in the shade, the engine running quietly. He opens the door and climbs into the back seat. The warmth of the car envelops him. "We're not going anywhere. We're waiting for a call," he tells the driver, without looking at him. He sits with his hands on his knees. In his right hand is a broken phone. He looks out the dark window, where snowflakes are melting. He's not just waiting for information. He's already making a plan in his head. He'll need to check the address. He'll need to buy groceries, clothes, rent. He's making a mental list. It's simple. It's logical. He can't leave this message unanswered. His evening now has one clear goal. He will wait. And then, act. The call comes exactly 22 minutes later. Jung-ho looks at his phone screen. "Min." He accepts the call. "Speak." "Owner, Amara Diallo. Address, Garibaldi Street, Building 14, Apartment 17. It's an old neighborhood on the northern outskirts. The phone is registered to her. No outstanding debts or legal problems. No other information." Mina's voice is even, like a report. Jung-ho nods, even though Min can't see him. "Okay, come to my place now. Grab your tools. I need access to this phone for confirmation. And get ready to leave." He hangs up and looks at the driver in the rearview mirror. "Let's go to the office, quickly." The car moves smoothly into motion and merges into the evening traffic. Jung-ho looks out the window at the flickering lights. He's already formulating a new plan. 15 minutes later, they pull up to a low, austere building in the business district. The windows on its floor are dark. The car stops at the service entrance. His office is bright and quiet. 7 minutes later, Min enters the door. He's a young man in simple dark clothes, carrying a backpack. He says nothing, merely bows his head slightly. Jung-ho hands him a wet, broken phone. "We need to make sure. Check your messages, call history. Confirm your address, maybe some other information about the child, about the outstanding rent. I need the full picture." Min picks up his phone. His movements are calm and professional. He takes a thin cable and a small tablet out of his backpack and sits down at a vacant desk in the corner of the office. His fingers move quickly across the tablet's screen. Jung-ho moves to the large window. He waits. He doesn't ask how long it will take. He trusts Min. 10 minutes pass. Min leans back in his chair. "Everything's confirmed. The message was sent today at 5:48 p.m. The call history includes numbers for a school, a hospital, and several job offers. There's correspondence with the apartment owner. She did ask for a rent deferment this week. She was denied. Nothing else of importance. The address is the same." Jung-ho turns away from the window, his face serious. "Excellent. So it's true. Assemble a team. You'll need San, Lee, and 2 others. Go ahead. Min nods quickly and gathers his things. What's the priority? Food, warm clothing for 2, a woman, and a 10-year-old child. Household essentials. Everything you need to live. And cash. A large sum. Go to the big supermarket on First Street. It's open 24 hours. You have an hour. I'll give you a list of the essentials. The rest is up to you, but be smart about it. I'll meet you there. Min repeats the short list dictated by Jung Ho. Meat, grains, milk, vegetables, fruit, bread, tea, warm jackets, sweaters, pants, shoes, bedding, soap, detergent, cleaning supplies. Understood. We'll do it. Min leaves the office. His quiet, quick voice is immediately heard in the hallway. He's calling the team. 20 minutes later, Jong Ho pulls up to a huge, brightly lit supermarket. It's nighttime, but the place is almost crowded. Waiting for him at the entrance are Min, San, Lee, and 2 others, Jae and Han. All are dressed in dark, discreet clothes. They look calm but collected. We have 2 carts, says Min. Jong Ho nods. They go inside. The team functions like a well-oiled machine. They split up. Min and Elle head to the clothing section. They quickly find the right size of warm winter jackets and grab 2. They add thick sweaters, thermal underwear, and warm pants. San and Jay are in charge of the food. Their cart quickly fills up. They don't look at the prices. They pick up the bare essentials, but high-quality items. Packages of chicken fillet, ground beef, rice, buckwheat, pasta, canned stew and fish, milk, butter, a dozen trays of eggs, apples, oranges, potatoes, onions, carrots. Khan goes to buy household cleaning supplies. He loads his cart with a large bag of laundry detergent, liquid soap, toothpaste, new towels, sponges, and dish soap. He also picks up 2 new blankets and bedding sets. Jong Ho watches everything, slowly following them through the hall. He occasionally adds something. He takes a box of good tea and a couple of chocolate bars from the shelf and places them in the food cart. Then he goes to the school supplies section and carefully places a new backpack, a set of pens, and notebooks there. He remembers there's a child there. 45 minutes later, both carts are piled high. They look like mountains of help. Nothing superfluous, just sturdy, useful items. The team approaches the checkout. San pays with a thick wad of cash from the staff fund. The cashier's eyes widen, but she rings up the purchases silently. There are more than 10 bags, large, heavy. They take everything out to the cars. The trunks of the 2 SUVs are completely filled. Young Ho is the last one to put everything in the car. A small but sturdy bank bag tucked into his car. It contained cash, enough for 6 months of comfortable living. He checked his watch. A little over an hour had passed since Ming's call. Everything was going according to plan. He looks at his cars, loaded with groceries and other belongings. Then he looks at the city map glowing on his phone screen. A dot is marked there, 14 Garibaldi Street. He takes a deep breath. The first part is over. Now he needs to go. The driver looks at the navigator. Garibaldi Street. Coming soon. Young Ho nods. He checks his phone. No new messages. Everything is going according to plan. But his face remains serious. He doesn't know what awaits him behind that door. He imagines an old 5-story building, peeling plaster, a dark entrance. His men in the second car drive in silence. They are used to their boss's unusual assignments. But this call is special. No one asks questions. The cars turn onto the right street. It's exactly the neighborhood he imagined. Low, post-war brick buildings, icy sidewalks, old cars, covered in snow and rust, are parked in the yards. They slowly approach building number 4. It's a gray 5-story building with dark squares of windows. The lights are out in one of the entrances. Here, says the driver, stopping the car right at the entrance. Jong Ho gets out. The frosty air hits his face. He straightens his coat and looks at the entrance. His men also get out of their cars. They stand and await his instructions. Jong Ho takes a piece of paper with an apartment number from his pocket. 17. Most likely, it's the 1st or 2nd floor. Unload everything. Carefully. San, Lee, you take the boxes. Min Jae, take the bags. Han, you stay with the trucks. Let's go. It's quiet in apartment 17. Amara sits on the edge of the worn sofa, staring at the screen of her old, nearly dead phone. She's reading her son's message again. It arrived a few hours ago. Her heart sank then, and it still does. She's already called everyone she could ask. She's left voicemails, messaged. No answer yet. The refrigerator is empty. All that's left is half a packet of salt and a little butter at the bottom of the jar. Her son is already asleep in the next room. Hungry, she closes her eyes. Out of helplessness, she needs to think of something tomorrow. Early in the morning, she'll go, she doesn't even know where. Maybe to church, or borrow money from her neighbor again, although she already shook her head last time. Suddenly, she hears a sound, a dull knock. First one, then another, more insistent. A knock on the door. She flinches. Who is it? It's so late. She's not expecting anyone. Her heart starts beating faster. Maybe a neighbor or the police? The very thought makes her shudder. She quietly rises from the sofa, careful not to creak the floorboards. She approaches the door. The apartment is dark. She doesn't turn on the light, so her silhouette won't be visible through the crack. She carefully, silently presses her eye to the cold glass of the peephole. What she sees makes her blood run cold. The hallway is dimly lit by a single bulb, but it's enough. There are people standing behind the door. Not one, not two, 5, 6 men, all in dark, formal clothes. Dark coats, dark hats. Their faces are serious, impassive. They look alien, not from this neighborhood, not from her world. They stand motionless, like statues. One of them, tall, slightly to the side, is looking straight at the door. Through the peephole, it seems to her that his gaze meets hers through the cloudy glass. She recoils from the door, pressing her hand to her mouth to keep from screaming. Her thoughts race. Who is this? Why? It's definitely not the police. The police don't come like this, quietly, at night, and knock politely. These aren't social services. They come during the day and are dressed differently. A terrible guess flashes through her mind. Debts? But she has no debts except for rent. Maybe this is for her ex-husband, but he disappeared long ago. Or have they got the wrong apartment? Her heart is pounding so loudly that she thinks she can hear it through the door. She freezes, leaning her back against the wall next to the door. She doesn't breathe. Maybe they'll leave if she can't hear their footsteps. But the knocking comes again. 3 clear, firm knocks. And then a voice. Low, calm, without threat, but also without warmth. Amara, it's about your phone. We found it. Can we talk? A phone? Her phone? She instinctively reaches into her robe pocket. It's empty. She remembers. Yes, she was in the park this afternoon, looking for work. She must have dropped it, this black, broken phone, her only connection to the world. They found it. These people found it. But why did they come here? And so many of them. Why didn't they take it to the lost and found office or call? Why did they find her address? This thought makes it even more terrifying. They know everything about her. They've figured her out, and now they're standing outside the door. She peers cautiously through the peephole again. They haven't left. They're waiting. The tall man is still staring at the door. Large, full supermarket bags are at his feet. Boxes. This is disconcerting. Robbers or bandits don't bring bags of food with them. She had to make a decision. There was nowhere to run. Should she wake her son and scare him? Pretend no one was there? But they seemed to know she was home. Their voices sounded confident. She slowly, with trembling fingers, reaches for the lock. Her mind screams of danger, but some dull feeling, perhaps despair, perhaps a faint hope, whispers, "Open. You're still trapped." Amara's finger pauses on the cold metal chain. She looks at it. A flimsy protection. Ridiculous. If these men want to enter, the chain won't stop them. She looks away at the door. Behind it, silence. But she feels their presence. They are waiting. The thought of her son sleeping in the next room pierces her like an electric shock. She can't risk it. But what if she doesn't open the door? They might start breaking down the door. The noise might wake the boy, scare him to tears. Or they might leave and come back tomorrow when she goes to the store. Goosebumps run down her spine. Can we talk? His words echoed in my head. There was no threat in them. There was confidence, like a doctor saying, "This is necessary." She closes her eyes for a second. She's tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of fighting every day. And now she simply doesn't have the strength for another battle. Whatever's behind the door is stronger than her. She exhales. Her shoulders sag. With a trembling hand, she first unclicks the chain. The ringing sound seems very loud in the silence. Then she turns the main lock. The key creaks. She reaches for the handle. Another deep breath. She opens the door. Not wide, just enough to stick her head out and cover the opening into her son's room. A group of men appears before her. They stand close together in a narrow corridor. There are many of them. But no one makes any sudden movements. They all look at her, not rudely, but attentively. She sees bags, lots of bags and boxes in their hands and on the floor. The man standing directly opposite steps forward. He is tall. His face, in the light of the corridor lamp, seems stern, but not angry. He looks straight at her. "Amara?" His voice is quiet. She nods, unable to speak. "My name is Jung Ho. We found your phone." He makes a barely perceptible gesture with his hand. And then his men begin to move. Slowly, carefully. One by one, they pass her and enter the apartment. They don't push. They don't glance around curiously. They are focused on their task. They carry large, heavy bags bearing the logo of a 24-hour supermarket. The bags rustle. They place them carefully on the floor in the small hallway. then return for more. Someone carries 2 large cardboard boxes labeled clothing. Others carry boxes of household cleaning products and toilet paper. They fill the space against the wall with a silent mountain of purchases. Amara stands, leaning against the doorframe of her son's room. She watches, eyes wide. Her fear hasn't gone away, but now it's tinged with utter bewilderment. She looks at the growing pile of groceries, at the boxes. She sees familiar packages of pasta, rice. She sees a carton of milk, a crate of eggs. This isn't a dream. This is real. These strangers in black are bringing food into her house. When the last bag is placed on the floor, Chan Ho's men step aside. They stand against the wall, hands folded in front of them. They don't sit down, don't look around the apartment. They simply wait. The hallway is now cramped. The scent of snow from their clothes and the subtle scent of new things fills the air. Jung Ho is still standing at the threshold. He hasn't gone inside. He's waiting for his men to finish. Now he's looking straight at Amara. For the first time, she sees him clearly. He's not young, but he's not old either. His face has clear, strong features. His hair is cut short, graying at the temples. He's wearing a dark coat of good quality, but not chic. He looks serious, businesslike, the way people who solve problems look, not the ones who create them. He meets her confused gaze. His own is heavy, penetrating, but there is no hostility in it. Rather, there is an appraising calm. He asks finally. His voice is still quiet, but it fills the silence of the apartment. Amara automatically takes a step back, letting him in. She still can't speak. She only nods. Chung Ho crosses the threshold. He pauses for a moment, his gaze sliding over the tiny hallway, now littered with shopping bags, and the open door to the sparsely furnished room. He sees an old sofa, a table, a television, nothing superfluous. He understands everything without words. Then his eyes return to her. Amara stands before him in her worn dressing gown. She feels vulnerable, exposed. She tries to compose herself, to straighten her back, but inside she's shaking. She looks at this stranger who brought an entire store into her home and doesn't know what to say. Thank you? But she doesn't even know why yet. Fear and hope war within her. They stand facing each other in the midst of this silent, incredible scene. He is the source of this sudden, stunning help. Sitting on that bench, checking job postings. She must have dropped it from her pocket when she stood up. It was lying in the snow, Jung Ho continues, almost completely. The screen was broken. I wanted to leave it there, but it turned on. The battery was dead, but the screen lit up. He pauses briefly, as if he can see that dark alley before him again, and the glowing cracked slab in his hand. He doesn't describe the park in detail, just the facts. I picked it up to see whose it was, so I could return it. Amara nods slowly. Logical. An honest man would have found it and tried to return it, but honest men don't figure out the address and show up at night with a trunk full of food. Her gaze glides over the bags, then returns to his face. The question hangs in the air. And then what? Jung Ho sees this silent question. He doesn't look away. He knows that now is the most important moment, the moment to be completely honest. There was a message on the screen, he says bluntly. One. I saw it. I didn't want to read someone else's correspondence, but it was right there in front of my eyes. I couldn't help but read it. He sees the muscles in Amara's face tense. Something painful, almost shameful, flashes in her eyes. She understands the message he's talking about, the message that reveals their entire plight, their hunger, their helplessness. This most personal, most painful thing has become known to the stranger. I read it, Jung Ho repeats, and for the first time, a very slight, barely perceptible note of something appears in his voice that is neither an excuse nor a pity, simply a statement. A fact that changed everything. It said, Mom, we're out of food again. Borrow money from someone. I'm really hungry. He speaks the words quietly, but very clearly. They ring loudly in the small hallway. Amara closes her eyes for a split second, as if struck. Her hand involuntarily reaches to her mouth. It hurts her that these words are spoken aloud. It hurts that someone else knows, especially someone like this. Jung Ho sees her reaction. He gives her a second to catch her breath. Then he continues. His tone is now even more neutral, almost businesslike. He removes all emotion from his voice, so as not to put pressure on her, so as not to sound condescending. I didn't stop to think. I decided to act. I have the opportunity to help, sometimes, when I see that help is needed. And it was needed here. He makes a small gesture with his hand toward the bags. I didn't come here to ask questions. I don't need to know your story. I don't need to know how you ended up in this situation. It's none of my business. His words don't sound harsh, but liberating. For Amara, it's a breath of fresh air. No interrogation. No judgment, no unpleasant curiosity. I saw a message from a hungry child. I was able to help. That's all. He says it so simply, as if explaining why he fixed a broken step on the stairs. Because it's broken. Because someone might fall. Because he can fix it. Everything here is the bare essentials. Food, warm clothes, household supplies. This isn't a gift. It's just help to solve today's problem. And so you have time to solve the rest. He looks at her, assessing if she understands. His face is serious, but there seems to be a shadow of something in the corners of his eyes that might be weariness or understanding. I don't expect anything in return. No thanks, no promises. All I needed was to read this message and know that now the child won't go to bed hungry and won't wake up tomorrow with the same question. He finishes. He said everything he wanted. Now he waits. He gave her the truth, the whole truth, and showed her what followed. Now it's her turn. Accept or reject. But looking at this pile of bags in her poor hallway, it seems she no longer has a choice. Help is already here. It is tangible. It smells like bread and a new blanket. After a short pause, Chung-ho turns his head slightly toward his men. They understand the gesture without words. San and El carefully pick up a few of the heaviest grocery bags and walk into the tiny kitchen. Amara instinctively steps aside, making way for them. She follows them with her eyes, still unable to move from the shock. The kitchen is almost empty. An empty bread bin and salt lie on the table. The refrigerator is old, humming quietly. San opens its door. It's empty inside, completely empty. Just an empty egg shelf and a few spice packets in the door. Lee begins carefully filling the space. He places a carton of milk, packages of butter, and cheese. He places the egg trays on the designated shelf. In the freezer, he arranges neat blocks of frozen meat and fish. Meanwhile, San arranges the rest of the items on the table and other available surfaces. Boxes of pasta, rice, buckwheat, and several types of grain, canned goods, stewed meat, fish, corn, flour, sugar. He arranges them in rows, neatly, as if displaying merchandise. Loaves of bread, bags of apples and oranges, a head of cabbage, and a basket of the potatoes are lined up on the small dining table. The kitchen, which a moment ago seemed empty and bare, is now filled to capacity. The smell of fresh bread and citrus slowly begins to displace the musty and hopeless odor. Amara looks at it. She sees her empty refrigerator filling up. She sees food, real food variety, more than she's bought in the last 6 months. Her hands start to shake. While San and Elle are busy in the kitchen, Min and Jae grab other bags. They open them right there in the hallway. Amara turns to them. Min takes out a large container of laundry detergent, then liquid hand soap and shower gel. He places them neatly in the corner. Jay places new folded towels on the floor, a bath towel and a smaller one. She didn't have money for new detergent, so she washed by hand with the remaining soap. She ran out of dish soap. She squeezed the last of it out of the nearly empty bottle. Now she has a supply. Little things. But these little things make up the ordinary life she never had. Then it's the cardboard box's turn. Khan brings them in and places them on the sofa in the main room. He rips open the tut with a knife. Inside, neatly folded, are clothes. First, Khan takes out a winter jacket. A woman's. Dark blue. Warm-looking, lined. He carefully places it on the back of the sofa. Then a second one, smaller, a child's green one. Then sweaters, thick woolen ones. One gray larger. Another, blue with stripes, a child's one. Thermal underwear, new warm pants, socks, gloves, all with tags. Everything new. He lays it all out on the sofa, creating a small, colorful mountain of warmth. Then he takes out new bedding from another box, 2 sets of soft-touch sheets, and 2 vacuum-packed down comforters. Amara slowly approaches the sofa. She reaches out and touches the sleeve of the child's jacket. The material is durable, high quality. She strokes it with her fingers. Then she looks at the striped sweater. Her son has been asking for a new sweater for a long time. The old one had become too small and was frayed at the elbows. She couldn't afford to buy him one. And now it's lying here, warm, new. She looks up at Jung-ho, who has stood silently this whole time, watching his order become reality. There's no longer fear on her face. Something else is growing there, something that takes her breath away and stings her eyes. She looks at the jacket, at the food in the kitchen, at the packets of detergent, at this stranger. This entire incredible array of aid has materialized in her small apartment in a matter of minutes. This isn't a dream, it's tangible. A figure appeared in the doorway of the room, a boy. He stood barefoot on the cold floor, rubbing his eyes with a sleepy fist. His vision was hazy with sleep, but he heard the rustling of bags and quiet voices. He peered out to see if he'd dreamed it, and he froze. His eyes, initially narrowed with sleep, suddenly widen, becoming enormous. He sees unfamiliar men. He sees his mother standing by the sofa. But most of all, he sees a pile of new clothes on their old sofa, and food. So much food in the kitchen that you can see it from the door. He doesn't scream. He doesn't run. He takes a cautious step forward, as if afraid to frighten the apparition. His gaze falls on a child's green jacket. Then it jumps to a striped sweater. Then to a crate of eggs on the kitchen table, to the oranges. He moves closer to the sofa and stops 2 steps away. He reaches out his hand, but hesitates to touch it. He looks at his mother, seeking permission or an explanation. His face is a mixture of surprise, disbelief, and slowly growing joy. "Mom," his voice was quiet, hoarse from sleep. Is this all for us?" Amara looks at her son, and her own confusion recedes, giving way to a wrenching feeling. She sees his hungry, rapt eyes. She nods, unable to speak for the lump in her throat. The boy carefully touches the fabric of his jacket with his finger. Then, growing bolder, he strokes the sweater. He turns and looks at the men standing quietly against the wall. His childish gaze glides over their serious faces, stopping at Jong-ho. There is no fear in him, only intense curiosity. Jong-ho watched the scene. He saw the boy's eyes. Now he takes a step forward. His movement attracts the attention of both Amara and the child. He slowly reaches into the inside pocket of his coat. What he pulls out isn't a wallet, but a plain white A4 envelope. The envelope is thick and filled. It's not absurdly thick, but you can tell it contains more than just a few bills. It looks substantial, weighty. Jung-ho hands the envelope to Amara. "Take it," he says simply. Amara automatically extends her hands. The envelope rests in her palms. It's heavier than she expected. The thick wad of paper inside presses against her fingers. She looks at the envelope, then at Jung-ho. She still doesn't understand. "Open it," he says quietly. Her fingers tremble as she lifts the unsealed flap of the envelope. She peers inside and freezes. There's money inside, a neat stack of large bills. Not just a few for a loaf of bread. It's a stack, thick, neat. She doesn't even need to count it to realize there's a lot of it. More than she's ever held in her life, more than she could have ever imagined. "This will be enough to live comfortably for 6 months, says Jong-ho. His voice is even, like an accountant stating a fact. "You can pay the rent, all your debts, buy what you still need. Take your time. Don't skimp on food." He pauses briefly, letting her realize. This isn't a loan. This isn't an advance. You don't have to pay anything back, ever. This money is yours. Amara listens, but the words seem to fly past her. Her mind is caught on the feeling of heaviness in her hands. She clutches the envelope. The paper rustles. It's a real sound, a real weight. 6 months. 6 months when she won't wake up in terror, wondering what to feed her son. 6 months when she can calmly look for a real job instead of taking any part-time job for pennies. 6 months of respite. She looks up at him. A tear wells in her eyes, but it doesn't fall. There's disbelief there, but it's already weakening under the weight of the facts. Food in the kitchen, clothes on the couch, a heavy envelope in her hands. I can't accept this," she whispers, but there's no force of refusal in these words. There's only the habitual caution of a poor person who fears that any gift will come with a high price later. "You can," he interrupts gently but firmly. "You have a child. You don't have a choice. Your choice is to make his life normal. Here's the tool for it." He looks at the boy, who holds his breath, as his mother holds an important envelope, then back at Amara. "Just use it wisely. That's all I ask." Jong-ho's words sound like the final click of a lock opening some inner door. The tension, the fear, the mistrust, all of it that had been clenching her insides all these minutes, suddenly releases. The strength with which she held on vanishes. At first, her chin just trembles, then her lips, a deep, stifled breath. She presses the thick envelope to her chest, clasping it with both hands like an anchor, and then the tears that have been standing in her eyes finally break through. They don't flow in a stream. They're not sobs. They simply roll down her cheeks, one after another, quiet and hot. She doesn't even try to brush them away. She stands in the middle of her suddenly transformed home, clutching the future of her family in her hands and cries. From relief, from the fact that this nightmare, this daily torture of fear, is ending. Right now, this second. Her son looks at her, and his own delight gives way to childish anxiety. He runs up to her and hugs her around the waist, pressing his face into her robe. "Mom, what's wrong?" he whispers. Amara places one hand on his head, stroking his hair, still holding the envelope in the other. "Everything's okay, son," her voice breaks. "Everything's okay now. These are tears of happiness." When the first flood of tears subsides, she wipes her face with the back of her hand. She looks again at Chung-ho, at his people, at this abundance invading her poverty, and a familiar feeling rises within her, a caution learned through bitter experience. "I don't understand," she says quietly, almost in a whisper, more to herself than to him. "This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen to me. She takes a step toward the sofa, touching the sweater, as if checking to see if it's real. People don't do things like that, not for strangers. You found a phone. You could have taken it to the lost and found. You could have just thrown it away. Why, all this? She gestures around the room, and her voice doesn't ring with ingratitude, but with a deep, ingrained disbelief in kindness. Her life has taught her something else, that every act has a hidden price, that help comes with strings attached, and miracles are just fairy tales for others. Young-ho listens to her. He doesn't smile, doesn't try to persuade. He just stands there. I already told you why, he replies. Because I could. You would do the same if you found someone's phone with that message, and were in a position to help. She shakes her head silently. No, in his place, she would probably try to find the owner, return the phone, maybe buy a loaf of bread if she had the extra cash, but not this. Never this. The scale of his help goes beyond her understanding of the world. It's too much, she breathes. Young-ho says suddenly, his voice losing some of its official harshness. In a few days. He looks at the boy, who's still hugging his mother, but is now studying his face with interest. You now have food, warm clothes. This could be considered a New Year's gift, to make the holiday truly special. These words change the perspective. They transform this incredible, terrifying generosity into something more familiar, more earthly. A gift. True, an incredible, stunning one, but a gift nonetheless, for the holiday. In a culture where New Year's is the most important family holiday, these words resonate. Amara looks at her son. She thinks about what this holiday should have been like. Perhaps one simple meal, trying to pretend everything was fine. And now they have everything they need to set a real holiday table, to give their son not just a new jacket, but also a sense of celebration, abundance, and security. A New Year's gift, she repeats slowly, and the first hesitant smile appears on her tear-stained face. She still doesn't believe in miracles, but she's starting to believe in this holiday, in this concrete, tangible twist of fate that happened on New Year's Eve. She looks again at the envelope in her hands. Not just money, a start, the opportunity to begin again. And the date, New Year's, seems the perfect symbol for such a beginning. Thank you, she says finally, and it's the first conscious thank you she's ever said directly to him. It's quiet, but filled with such sincere depth that it's impossible not to feel it. You have no idea what this means to us. Jung-ho nods slightly in response to her thank you. His face doesn't change, but his eyes seem to warm a degree. Then he reaches into his coat pocket again, but this time, not the inside one, but the side one. He takes out not an envelope, but a small box. Rectangular, made of smooth cardboard. No bright pictures, but new, clean. He holds it in the palm of his hand. Your phone, he says, looking at Amara. The one I found. It was in the snow. The screen is broken. It's soaked through. It doesn't work. He hands her the box. Here's a new one. Just as basic, but reliable. With a SIM card and a number. Everything is already set up. Your old number has been transferred. Amara looks at the box, then at her old dead device lying on the table. She hadn't even thought about the phone. It seemed like a small thing compared to everything else going on. But I can fix the old one, she says automatically, clinging to what she has out of habit, afraid to accept anything even more valuable. Or dry it out. Jung-ho shakes his head. Once briefly and decisively. No, water got inside. Even if it turns on, it won't work properly, and then it'll break completely. It's an important thing. It's connected to work, to my son's school, to everyone. It has to be reliable. His explanation doesn't sound like a justification for an expensive gift, but like a logical, technical conclusion. A broken thing, on which so much depends, needs to be replaced. It's that simple. I didn't buy the most expensive one, the most sophisticated one. I bought one that would last a long time and do its job, like a tool. He pauses again, letting her realize. Your old phone has fulfilled its last and most important function. It showed me that message. That's enough. Now it's time to retire. As Amara, still stunned, slowly picks up the box, her son finally fully understands what is happening. Mom! Mom! Is this a new phone? His voice squeals with delight. All his caution and drowsiness vanish in an instant. His eyes light up with such a bright flame of happiness that they seem to illuminate the entire room. He lets go of his mother and jumps up and down. Once, then again. Real new? No cracks? He can't contain his emotions. His small body, full of accumulated stress and deprivation from months, now releases all that energy in pure, uncontrollable joy. He begins jumping around the couch, waving his arms. His laughter, ringing and sincere, fills the quiet apartment, displacing the last traces of the heavy atmosphere. Hooray! We have food, and a new jacket, and a phone. Mom, look! He runs to the box in her hands, but doesn't grab it. instead touching the edge with his finger, mesmerized. Then he turns to Young-ho, his face beams. "Thank you, uncle! Thank you so much!" This explosion of childish, genuine joy is more powerful than any words. Amara watches her son leap, and her own uncertainty and disbelief melt away like snow. Outside the window, under a sudden ray of sunlight, she sees more than just gifts. She sees childhood returned. She sees the ease a child should have, not the constant worry. She clutches the box with the phone and the envelope to her chest and looks at Young-ho through tears that have welled up again. But now they are tears of purification. Her son continues to jump and laugh, and this sound is the best answer to all the questions and doubts. Help has come, and it has been accepted. The boy's laughter, that pure, joyful sound, finally dissolves the last bits of awkwardness in the air. Amara looks at her son's beaming face, at the full shelves in the kitchen, at the silent men still standing by the wall, as if awaiting the command to leave, and she realizes she can't just let them go. It can't be like that, not after all this. She carefully places the precious envelope and the box containing the phone on the table. She wipes the remaining tears from her cheeks with her palm, takes a deep breath, and addresses Jung-ho. Her voice still trembles a little, but there is no longer any fear in it, only sincerity. "You have to stay," she says, directly and simply. "Stay for dinner. We have something to cook with now, and I can't just take all this and let you leave hungry. That would be wrong." She glances at all his people, including each one in her invitation. "Please, I'll cook. It won't take long. It's the least I can do." Her son immediately catches up, stopping jumping. He runs up to Chung-ho and looks up at him, his eyes wide and hopeful. "Stay, uncle, please. Mom makes delicious potatoes, and now we have meat, real meat." The situation takes a completely surreal turn. In the poor woman's cramped apartment, surrounded by evidence of her former poverty, which had just been eliminated with military efficiency, a warm, homely invitation to dinner for 6 stern men now rings out. Amara isn't offering it out of politeness. She offers it from the heart. It's the only form of gratitude she has at the moment, to share what they brought her. Jung-ho freezes. This was the one thing he didn't expect. Not fear, not tears, not questions, but hospitality. His plan was simple: deliver aid, explain the situation, leave. His world works like that. Clear orders, quick execution, results. No personal connections, no follow-up. He looks at Amara. He sees in her eyes not duty, but desire. A desire to do something normal, human, to thank her in her own way. He looks at her son, who looks at him, holding his breath, waiting for a response. Then his gaze slowly slides to his men. Min, San, Lee, Jae, Han. They stand motionless, their faces professional masks. But he knows them. He knows they've been up since early this morning, that they've carried out the unusual order flawlessly, without so much as a wince. That they, too, are probably hungry. He sees Han glance, almost imperceptibly, at the fragrant bags in the kitchen. It's not greed. It's simply the natural reaction of a tired person to the smell of food. Arguments against this flash through Young-ho's mind. This violates all social distancing rules. It's too personal. It could be taken the wrong way. They should leave before their presence raises questions from the neighbors. But then he looks at the table piled high with the groceries they've bought, at the warm jackets on the couch. He remembers the message in the snow. "I'm very hungry." He brought food here to feed a hungry child. And now they're asking him to share it. It doesn't make sense for his business, but it's right, humanly right. He feels the boy's gaze on him. The anticipation in those childish eyes is the heaviest weight on the scale. If he refuses now, after everything that has happened, it will leave a strange, bitter aftertaste. As if the help was official, heartless, and it was not. Jung-ho exhales slowly. He's breaking one of his unspoken rules, just for one evening. He turns to Amara and gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Fine, we'll stay. But only if you let us help around the kitchen. There are plenty of us. We'll get it done faster." Then he turns to his team. His voice is quiet, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Relax. Help out in the kitchen. We're guests here." A subtle shift occurs on the stony faces of his men. Their eyes soften slightly. Their brows smooth out slightly. No one smiles, but the atmosphere instantly shifts from formal to almost homely. San is the first to move away from the wall and head to the kitchen. "Let me wash the potatoes and vegetables," he says to Amara, and there's no trace of the former detachment in his voice, only a businesslike willingness to help. Lee approaches the bags and begins to take out the purchased meat. "Does this need to be sliced?" he asks simply. Min and Jae begin clearing the kitchen counter to make room for cooking. Han, noticing a small folding table in the corner of the hallway, silently unfolds it to increase the work surface. Amara, momentarily stunned by such a rapid turn of events, comes to her senses. The smell of raw vegetables and meat mingles with the general feeling of some incredible, impossible, yet accomplished miracle. Jung-ho takes off his coat and carefully hangs it over the back of a chair. He stands amid this suddenly animated chaos, watching his disciplined, efficient soldiers peacefully peel potatoes and chop onions under the gentle instructions of a woman in a worn robe. He doesn't help personally. He observes, and for the first time in a very long time, something spontaneous, warm, and completely selfless occurs in his strictly structured, controlled world. He simply nodded, and that was enough for the walls to finally crumble. The kitchen comes alive. Its tiny size now seems like an advantage. Everyone is close. Everyone is involved. A strange but efficient production line emerges. San stands at the sink. He carefully washes each potato, scraping away any dirt, with a precision unusual for his large hands. The water runs quietly. He places the clean tubers in a bowl. Bell stands next to him, handling the onions and carrots. His movements with the knife are quick and precise. Even, thin half rings of onion, neat cubes of carrot falling onto the cutting board. He doesn't shed a tear. His face is focused, as if he's performing delicate technical work. Min found a frying pan, a large cast iron one, old but sturdy. He placed it on the stove and turned on the heat. He took out a package of butter and a piece of pork neck they had bought. While the pan was heating, he cut the meat coarsely and confidently into even portions. Jae and Han help Amara with the rest. Jae opens a packet of rice, measures the right amount into a saucepan, and pours water over it. Han, meanwhile, arranges the plates and glasses his son brought on the cleared dining table. The boy runs between the kitchen and the living room, fetching forks, then salt, then napkins, feeling like an extremely important participant in the event. Amara is at the center of this movement, directing the process with quiet instructions. Lee, the carrots can be larger. They'll be stewed later. San, after washing the potatoes, cut them like this, into large wedges. Her voice gradually gains confidence. This is her territory, her kitchen, and even with the unusual helpers, she knows what to do. She watches the butter melt in Min's pan and says, "Now the meat, brown it on all sides." Min nods silently and places the pieces of meat in the sizzling oil. The sound and aroma instantly fill the room, rich, fatty, deliciously homey. She takes the potatoes San-washed and quickly, with practiced movements, cuts them. Then she approaches Min. "Let me add the onions and carrots to the meat, and let's simmer for a bit." Min gives her his place at the stove, goes to the table, and begins helping Han with the setting. There's a concentration in the air, but not the same as before. This is a focus on a common task. The scraping of knives, the sizzling of butter, Amara's voice giving instructions, the boys fussing, all of it blends into a strangely harmonious, everyday noise. The men are silent, but their silence no longer seems threatening. It's simply focused. They're doing what they do best, getting things done. Only the task now is making dinner. Jung-ho watches, leaning against the doorframe. He sees his men, usually busy with other matters, busily peeling vegetables and setting the table. He sees Amara's face gradually lose its traces of stress, flushed slightly by the heat of the stove and her concentration. He sees her son, passing Lee, stop and gaze admiringly at the knife flying in his hands. "Wow, how fast!" Lee pauses for a second, looks at the boy, and something resembling a smile twitches at the corner of his mouth. 40 minutes later, dinner is ready. A large skillet steams on the table, where meat, potatoes, onions, and carrots have been simmering in a fragrant sauce. A deep bowl of fluffy rice sits nearby. Sliced bread lies on a plate. It's modest, yet incredibly appetizing and plentiful. The table is small. There aren't enough chairs for everyone. Han and Jae quickly bring an old chest and a stool from the room and cover them with a folded blanket. They make a makeshift bench. Everyone takes their seats. There's a brief, awkward pause. Amara and her son sit on one side. Jung-ho takes the head of the table, with Min and San to his right. To his left, on the chest, are Lee, Jae, and Han. They sit close together, their shoulders almost touching. This isn't a banquet hall. It's a small family dinner with unexpected guests. Amara looks at her table, laden with food, and at the people around her. "Please," she says softly, "don't be shy." Her son is already reaching for the bread. Jung-ho nods, taking the spoon. This serves as a signal. His men begin to serve themselves food. Their movements are restrained at first, but the smell and sight of hot, freshly cooked food take over. The silence is broken by the clink of a spoon on a plate, then another, then a quiet, "This is very tasty." It's San speaking, tasting the meat. His voice sounds genuinely surprised. He's eaten out a lot, but this simple, home-cooked, filling dish hits the spot. Amara smiles, looking down sheepishly. Thank you. It's just stew. It's good, Lee confirms, and the others nod silently, continuing to eat. The ice finally melts. There's no small talk at the table. The conversations are clipped and simple. The boy, plucking up his courage, asks Ming, "Can you all cut that fast too?" Ming shakes his head. No, Lee is the best with a knife. The boy looks at Lee with even greater respect. One of the men passes bread. Another pours water from a jug. Amara makes sure everyone has enough, sometimes forgetting about her own plate. Jung-ho eats slowly, carefully observing. He watches Amara eat for the first time in months, not thinking about tomorrow, but simply enjoying the taste of the food and the quiet hum of voices at her table. This dinner doesn't bring them together in the traditional sense. They don't become friends or family. They are people from completely different worlds, whose paths collided for a few hours. But at this close table, over bowls of simple food, these worlds temporarily cease to be alien. Here, there are only the basics: hunger that is satisfied, work that unites, and a quiet, non-committal human presence. Chung-ho finishes his meal. He places his spoon on his plate. His movement is noticed. One by one, his men finish as well. The plates are empty. The frying pan is half empty. A contented, sleepy silence reigns on the table, broken only by the measured breathing of the child, who is almost asleep. Amara looks at them. At the calm, tired faces of the men, at her son, at the traces of the feast on the table, her eyes sparkle again, but now it's a gleam of deep, bottomless calm. "Thank you," she says again, and the word means so much more now. "For everything." Jong-ho meets her gaze and bows his head slightly, almost imperceptibly. A nod. Accepted. Just one nod. But in it lies the understanding that everything was done correctly, from the first to the last minute of this long, incredible evening. The silence after dinner was warm and satisfying. It hung in the air, mingling with the smell of stewed meat and human warmth in the cramped room. The child had finally given up and was dozing, slumped on his side, his cheek pressed against the cool surface of the table. Jung-ho pushed his plate away and slowly rose. His movement was quiet, but it served as a signal to the others. Min, San, Lee, Jae, and Han all stood up at the same time, their chairs creaking softly. They didn't say a word, but their actions were as synchronized as always. They began clearing the table, slowly without fuss. San collected the empty plates and carried them to the kitchen. Lee carefully returned the remaining bread to the bag. Jae wiped the table with a damp cloth he found near the sink. Han washed and dried the spoons, arranging them on the shelf. They moved around the small apartment silently, efficiently, without disturbing each other, transforming the aftermath of dinner into cleanliness and order. It was their natural habit to finish the job, leaving behind an organized appearance. Amara wanted to protest, to jump up, to say she'd clean it up herself, but she froze watching. She watched these big, serious men carefully wash her one large frying pan, wipe her old dining table until it sparkled, and neatly fold the towels. This wasn't a favor. It was a gesture, the finishing touch, the completion of what they'd started. Asta, Chung-ho approached the sleeping boy. He looked at him for a second, then took his wool shawl from the hanger, where it hung over his coat. It was an expensive but simple dark gray garment. He didn't wake the child. Instead, he very carefully, almost weightlessly, draped the warm fabric over his shoulders and back. The boy's cheek sank deeper into the table in his sleep, but he didn't wake. Amara saw this gesture. Something inside her swelled with tenderness and even greater gratitude. She found no words. She simply looked at Jong-ho and nodded quietly, accepting this small gesture. When the last plate had been washed and placed on the drying rack, and the crumbs had been swept from the table, the men gathered in the hallway. They were ready to leave, the air again filled with the slight tension of impending separation. Amara stood up and straightened her robe. She approached Jong-ho, who was already putting on his dark coat. "I don't know what to say," she began, her voice shaking. "You gave me more than just help. You gave me hope, and that evening, I'll never forget it." Jong-ho buttoned his coat. He looked at her with his impenetrable, heavy gaze. "Forget about us," he said calmly. "Just remember that now you have the opportunity to change everything. Take it, for him." He nodded toward his sleeping son. "That's the only gratitude that matters." He paused as if weighing his next words. "The phone. There's one number on it. Mine. It doesn't obligate you to anything. But if a real disaster happens and you can't handle it yourself, call. Only then. Do you understand?" It wasn't a request to maintain contact. It was a safety line thrown from the heights of his powers down into her still fragile new reality. A final sign of responsibility. Amara understood. She nodded, clutching the hem of her robe. "I understand." He turned a stout few. His men silently ushered him forward. Before leaving, Chung-ho turned back once more. His gaze slid over the clean table, over the child sleeping peacefully under a gray shawl, over Amara's face, which finally showed not exhaustion but simply weariness, healthy weariness, after a long day. "Good night," he said quietly, and he walked out into the dark entryway. One by one, his men left, nodding goodbye to Amara. Min was the last to close the door behind him, trying to make the latch click almost silently. Their footsteps faded on the stairs. Then the front door slammed. Then came the quiet rumble of revving engines, which quickly faded away and dissolved into the night silence of the outskirts. Amara stood in the middle of the suddenly empty, unusually quiet apartment. The silence was different now. Not frightening or lonely, it was full, filled with the smell of food, cleanliness, a sense of safety. She slowly walked around the room. She touched the smooth surface of the table, wiped clean until it squeaked. She glanced into the kitchen. It was perfectly tidy. Even the sink gleamed. Her gaze fell on the sofa, where new clothes lay neatly stacked, and on the table, where the box containing the phone and that same thick, heavy envelope sat nearby. She approached her son. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she picked him up. He was heavy, sluggish from sleep. She carried him to their only bedroom, laid him on the bed, and covered him with a new blanket from one of the boxes. He whispered something unintelligible in his sleep and buried his face in the pillow. She stroked his hair, then adjusted the gray shawl that Jong-ho had forgotten to take. The fabric was soft and very warm. Returning to the main room, she began slowly, almost ritualistically, putting away the gifts. She put the groceries in the kitchen, cupboards, and refrigerator. She folded the clothes in a spare dresser. The envelope and phone were tucked into the back drawer of the dresser, under the linens, not to hide, but to protect. They were treasures, a foundation. Then she sat down on the sofa, the very same one where she had lain in despair just a few hours earlier. She hugged herself and looked out the dark window. Snow was still falling outside, the same world, but her world within these walls had changed irrevocably. She wasn't thinking about the money. She wasn't thinking about the food. She was thinking about the men's faces as they ate her simple meal, about Lee's concentration as he chopped onions, about Son's diligent washing of potatoes, about Young-ho's nod when he agreed to stay, about his last look. They were ghosts from another dimension who had materialized in her life for one night, fixed everything, and then vanished. She might never see them again. And as he had commanded, she had to try to forget their faces. But what they had done was impossible to forget. She felt not the burden of debt, but an incredible winged lightness, as if the concrete slabs she'd lived under for years had been lifted from her shoulders. Tomorrow, she wouldn't have to rush around looking for any kind of work. Tomorrow, she could calmly take her son to school, then sit down and think, consider where to find a normal job, maybe even sign up for some classes, calculate a budget, pay the rent. Yes, first of all, tomorrow, go and pay the rent. Remove this stone. She stood up, walked to the window, and touched her forehead to the cold glass. The street was dark and deserted. No black cars, no tracks. As if nothing had ever happened. Only inside, this quiet, enduring revolution. "Good night," she whispered into the darkness, as if the words could carry to the departing cars. Then she repeated it silently, addressing the entire world, this entire incredible night. "And thank you." She turned off the light and went into the bedroom. To join her son, she lay down next to him, covering herself with the edge of the new blanket. The dim light of a street lamp fell through the window, illuminating the outline of a child's jacket hanging over the back of a chair. She looked at it, listening to her son's even breathing. The dripping faucet drifted through the thin wall, an old familiar sound from her former life, but now it sounded less like a symbol of devastation and more like a simple household noise, something she could deal with tomorrow. She closed her eyes. For the first time in months, her sleep wasn't an escape from the horror of tomorrow. It was just a dream. Before a new day, before a new year, before a new life that was finally beginning. The morning arrived clear and frosty. The first ray of sun fell on a new jacket hanging on a chair. Amara awoke to an unusual silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. She lay and listened to it for a few minutes. Then she stood. In the kitchen, she opened the refrigerator. It was full. She took out eggs, milk, and bread. She made breakfast, a real one. When her son sat down at the table, the first thing he did was touch his new plate. "Is it really all ours, Mom?" he asked. "Really," Amara replied. "It is." After breakfast, she took out an envelope, carefully counted out the money for the rent, then a little more for the unexpected. She hid the rest deep. The money wasn't for spending, but for security. She paid the rent that same day. The landlady was surprised, but took the money without question. The burden that had been weighing her down for months vanished. Amara bought her son a new backpack, the one that had been lying around among his things. She sent him to school. Then she sat down and started looking through job postings. Now she had a choice. Looking for something stable, not urgent. The new phone was in the drawer. She turned it on. There was only one contact. Young Ho. She didn't save the name. She just left the number, and she never opened that contact again. It was like an escape valve. Reliable silence. A week later, she got a job in a small office as a courier. The salary was modest, but now it was just part of the budget, not the sole source of panic. She told no one about that night. It was her secret, a secret that smelled of stewed potatoes and warm wool. Sometimes in the evening, while her son was doing his homework and she was planning her budget for the month ahead, her gaze would fall on that very same dresser drawer. She didn't open it. She simply knew that there was a thick white envelope and a phone box inside, and a gray shawl, which she had carefully washed and folded. It wasn't wealth, it was armor. Armor made of simple human kindness that allowed her to get back on her feet. One day, closer to spring, she was walking past that very park. She stopped and looked at the bench. The snow had already melted. Nothing reminded her of that evening. She smiled to herself and continued on, home, where her son awaited her, a warm dinner, and a life that had finally become just life, not a struggle for survival. The miracle was over. Ordinary, beautiful reality had begun.